Okay. Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be speaking today with Chris Voss, the FBI negotiator, the CEO and founder of the Black Swan Group, who is graciously joining us at 7 a.m. in his area, which is in Las Vegas, Nevada. Are you in Las Vegas?
I'm in Las Vegas, yes.
Amazing. And he's already been up because apparently he's up pretty early. And we're going to have a discussion about what he does, and that is the art of negotiation and persuasion. So, Chris, for the people who do not know you, I think there's very little people that do not know you, but just for the sake of those who don't know you, can you please share who you are and what you do and where you're coming from right now?
Sure. Yeah. I'm originally a small-town boy from Iowa, but I became the FBI's lead international kidnapping negotiator. I worked kidnappings and terrorism all over the world. And then I left the FBI and started teaching business negotiation, using the ideas of hostage negotiation for business negotiation. And about 3 years ago, I put out a book, Never Split the Difference, on business negotiation. And it works in personal life too. And it's a best-selling business negotiation book in the world.
That is amazing. When did you decide? Well, first of all, let me backtrack. How does one get into becoming a lead FBI negotiator? Is there an actual school for that? I know you're teaching it, but what was your path to getting into that role? Was there an internal FBI training? How did you develop that skills and land yourself there?
Yeah, there's a school, there's an FBI school that you go to. Getting to it can be kind of indirect, difficult, a little bit of a journey. I was in FBI New York City. I was on the Joint Terrorist Task Force, and I'd previously been on the SWAT team. And I just kind of decided I want to be a negotiator. I just thought, how hard could it be? It's just talking to people, right? I go around talking to people every day.
Yeah.
And I went to the negotiation team in New York at the time was run by a woman, Amy. And
Can we go back to the year that was when that happened? What year was that?
It was the late 90s. It was the early 90s, early 1990s.
Okay, early 90s.
Yeah, early 90s. It was roughly about 1991.
Wow.
I approached Amy. It was an interesting period of time in New York. It's one of the most dangerous times. New York was a mess. It was an absolute.
By the way, I started in matchmaking in 92. So for those who want to do the simple math, that was about 29 years ago, almost 30 years ago, when you became an FBI negotiator, or you transitioned into that role.
Yeah, well, I was actually trained in 92. I went to the school. Quantico is sort of the place that you see in all the movies and TV where the training is. It's kind of a mystical place that people's lives are transformed there, and that's where the school is. And that's when I got into the 2-week school, and one thing led to another. Working kidnappings and terrorism, and I ended up running our international response operation.
Now, I don't know what the rescue rate is or what the terminology is for wins, because obviously as a negotiator, you have one of the most important and crucial roles to save lives. I mean, you and your entire team. But whenever we see this in the movies, the guy comes in, usually it's a guy. I didn't realize that women did that too, but are there female negotiators as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that secrets, women are probably better at it than men are.
Really? I was wondering whether a woman got on the phone and a hostage negotiator, like the person on the other end would be like, get this bee off the phone, or maybe didn't have a respect for women just because I don't know who you're dealing with, particularly when you're talking about terrorists. So I'm glad that you say that. I would assume a man would be able to negotiate better in the case where there's a respect level, right?
Respect is earned quickest by giving it. The reciprocity thing. And actually, the real key to power negotiations is deference. And a lot of people think, well, you got to be a jerk to be powerful in the negotiations. No, if you're deferential, you'd be shocked at what you can get away with.
Is that why you're so nice?
Of course it is. I'm the nicest guy I know.
Oh my goodness. So would you classify yourself as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, 1,000% completely.
Okay.
And then really understanding what that means too. I mean, there's a lot more to it.
Perfect. That was my question, is what does entrepreneurship mean to you? And we met at the Genius Network annual event. That was through Joe Polish. I saw you on stage. I was impressed from that point. But that's a room full of entrepreneurs. So I know that this is like a tribe. So love to know what your perspective is on what entrepreneurship means.
Well, entrepreneurship, I mean, you better be ready to get into the deep end. I mean, somebody once said, like, becoming an entrepreneur because you want to have more time is like having kids because you want help around the house. It ain't that easy. It's a lot more complicated than that. There's a lot more there. You better be into it. I was known in the FBI for working very hard. I probably outworked everybody I worked with. And when I started the Black Swan group and what I'm doing now, one of my colleagues said to me, geez, you're working harder than you ever did before. And I don't notice it. But, you're in the deep end when you're an entrepreneur. There's a lot there. People ask me what I do for fun. I'm like, my life is fun. But it's diving in really deep. There's more to it than anybody realizes. And the upside is much higher, psychologically satisfying, more than anybody ever realized. But there's a lot more to it. It's one of those things that looks easy. And I wouldn't want to say it's hard, but you got to be into it. It's a deep end. Spoken
like a true entrepreneur, because that's the challenge is dating one. Dating an entrepreneur can be challenging.
Wait a minute. My girlfriend, no, it's not a challenge to date me, baby. I'm wonderful. I'm delightful. Everything will be good.
Someone's watching this, aren't they? So do you, as an entrepreneur or when you're dating one, because obviously I'm a matchmaker and I think, I really wanted you to come on, to absolutely get the tips on negotiation, but we're always in a form of negotiation. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, absolutely.
Even when I had to ask you to come on this show, it's like value proposition. What do I want to talk about? Like all those things. But we had met each other at an event. Let's get right down to that art of negotiation. I mean, you teach so much about it. A masterclass. You've written books about it. Are there, 3 go-to tips or 3 points of the art of negotiation that you can just, spit out right now that would be helpful?
Hear the other side out.
Sorry?
Hear the other side out.
Okay.
That's the first thing. I mean, everybody wants to be heard. Now we got a bunch of, there's neuroscience behind us now. Like there's something we call the that's right moment. The that's right moment is when somebody feels completely heard. They say, that's right. They look at you when you have heard them out. They look at you and they say, that's right. That's right. I mean, that's what we say when we're all in. Like when somebody says something we completely believe in, we don't say you're right. We say that's right. The critical difference is the first word. That's right. Like wherever you are in the world, when your politicians are up for election, if they debate each other, if they give a speech that you love, you don't look at that politician and say, you're right. You don't say he's right. You don't say she's right. You say, that's right. And we get that in our personal interactions too. Now, what happens when you say that's right? It's actually an epiphany. Someone has said something to you that gives you clarity, gives you insight. You have experienced an epiphany. What happens neurologically, neurochemically, when you get an epiphany? You get a hit of some magic drugs that your body produces.
Is that the oxytocin that you're talking about?
Now we're getting it. You get a hit of oxytocin. As the coach knows, that's the bonding drug.
Serotonin, dopamine. You can talk about all those things. Okay, so and each of them have an impact to your psyche and to your behavior. Yes.
Yeah, well, it changes. You feel bonded to the person that you're with. And if you're bonded to them, in a negotiation, you want to collaborate. You want to come up with a great deal. In a personal relationship, you want a deeper personal relationship. You want to be around that person.
It's funny because when I sometimes say to my own partner, or if I'm in conflict and I look at them and say, you're right, that's almost passive aggressive in that I'm like, yep. So you think so? Yep, you're right. As if like, okay, you don't get me.
Right.
You're right. I'm wrong. And now it's like we're at a standstill and you don't get me. And that distinction, you're being able to listen to someone say, that's right. Completely different world. And I just got that in this conversation.
Yeah. I mean, and it's such a subtle difference, and that we never see it till somebody points it out to us. Then we go like, oh God, yeah. It's the whole time.
So if someone says you're right, then likely I don't got it right.
No, unfortunately. Yeah, like you said, the person who says you're right, they're kind of like, I can't take it anymore. Just
they gave up. They gave up.
Just stop.
Right. Is it similar to, okay, so that's point number one. I love that. So it sounds to me that the start is to be a good listener. Yes?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
To really drop your view and get them, like really get them, not be attached. Because I know in a lot of communication, we talk about already always listening. Like, I'm not really listening to you. I'm just seeing words come out of your mouth, but I'm really listening to what's going on in my head.
Right.
So I'm really not getting you. Okay, so that's number one. What would be another key point to being a successful negotiator?
Well, now let's kick it up a notch. Take it a little bit further, in encouraging them proactively. Like, how do we want to do that? What does that mean? I mean, we're kind of driven by negative thoughts. Now, the crazy thing that we don't realize, but now neuroscience completely backs this up, identifying negatives diminishes them. Now, we don't think that's going to work because most people are used to denying negatives. Like, if you and I are not getting along, whether we're in a personal relationship or whether we're in a business relationship, if my gut instinct is telling me that you're angry with me, I'm going to say, look, I don't want you to think I'm a jerk. That's a denial. That's the wrong way to do it. That's the elephant in the room is you think I'm a jerk. And I'm going to say, look, I don't want you to think there's an elephant in the room. You're going to blow up. You're going to say, there's an elephant in the room, you idiot. It's right there. If you want to say it's not there, you're insulting me. Now, the flip side is, if there's an elephant in the room, if you think I'm a jerk, I'm going to say, look, you probably think I'm a jerk right now. And you're going to be relieved. You're going to say, wow, that was
so you're saying, if there's an elephant in the room, a lot of people side skirt it, right, or they don't talk about the elephant,
right,
or the elephant's there, but they, as you said, they're not acknowledging that there's an elephant.
Right.
What you're saying is, let's say that I am angry because you were a jerk. Let's just, if that was the scenario we're talking about, you said something that got under my skin. Partners can do that. You're saying that thing that I don't want you to talk about, and you did it. That's the jab. And now you're just pretending that you never said it, or you forgot you made that agreement. And the thing is, you want to be clear. So let's give the direct example. You are late for your date, and it was important. Like, your wife wanted you home at 10 o'clock because you're driving her to whatever, and now you're late. It's compromised. She's pissed. And what would be the best situation? To acknowledge, I'm late. I didn't make the necessary adjustments. I understand the impact. It's unforgivable, blah, blah, blah. What would you say?
Yeah. So, I know I let you down. And then most people want to go, but I had all these good reasons. The word but is getting ready to come out of your mouth. That's the perfect time to shut up.
Okay.
Just shut up. Everybody should learn. Like, the butt's coming. It's in the back of my brain. It's getting ready to come out of my mouth. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. At that point in time, your gut instinct, the universe, everybody is saying, shut up. What you just said, if your acknowledgement of the problem is an honest and genuine one, and it is, then let it sink in. Let it have its effect. Don't squash it by saying but. But is an erasing
Right.
word.
It's
Don't erase the candor that you just displayed.
it's like the apology with the but.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that just a no? Like, should all apologies just come with the apology and no buts?
Well, yes. First answer to that is yes. I mean, the word "but" should never come across your lips. It just shouldn't. Again, that's when you should just shut up. Now, apologies can be appropriate. It depends upon when you drop them. Like if I'm getting ready to say, if you and I are supposed to, if I'm supposed to meet you for dinner,
Yes,
and I'm going to miss it, I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I'm not coming for dinner. Now,
okay.
that's a better way than saying, I'm not coming for dinner, I'm sorry. There was a sequence there.
So
Now,
I'm sorry, which one's the better way to say that again?
I'm sorry, I'm not coming for dinner. When I say I'm sorry first, that's a bit of a warning. That should be a warning. The bad news is on the way. People are ridiculously resilient to bad news if you give them a chance to brace themselves. And that sequence is, if I start the conversation going, I'm sorry, your first thought in that instance is going to be like, what are you sorry about? And then I say, I'm not coming for dinner. Then you go like, oh, okay. Now, you don't know the difference in the moments. But if I had said, I'm not coming for dinner, I'm sorry, that the other way, me hitting you with the bad news with no warning, then your reaction would be like, you ain't sorry. You broke, you said you were going to be here. People just have no idea the massive difference in the sequencing there. But the I'm sorry and then the bad news is the way to deliver bad news.
So I love that. That raises another point because I was going to talk to you about, when you want to talk to your partner or employer or someone who is meaningful to you about a subject that is not going to be welcome, it's not going to be received well. Just before this, our live, you and I chatted a little bit, and I said, right now during the pandemic, there is a lot of relationship crisis going on. A lot of couples are breaking up. People are wanting, like, issues are heightened, right?
Right.
So before you talk about an issue, there should be some warning. You're saying it's better received when there is some warning to this discussion. Is there a magic series of words or lead up to talk to someone when there is a concern? Let's say that you are thinking the relationship is rocky and you want to have that discussion, or maybe you're even thinking about ending that relationship. What would be a good lead up to that?
Yeah, well, you got to give somebody a warning. It can be in a couple of different ways, but you got to warn them bad news is coming. Then you got to drop it on them. Like if you wait,
don't hold it.
No, if you wait longer than a second, you're waiting too long, because then it becomes excruciating for the other person. People brace themselves really fast. Like if I'm in any relationship with you, let's say we're in a relationship, the pandemic has exacerbated, or whatever the word is. Forgive me.
Yeah, that's okay. Like it's exhausting. You had previous issues. The pandemic is raising these issues. You're now like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. So I'd say, look, I'm sorry. I got bad news. I'm done. I'm out. I got to go. Give people a chance to brace themselves, and then hit them with the bad news.
There's not much brace there.
No, because then it becomes torturous. If you make people wait too long, I mean, we have the ability to brace ourselves astonishingly quickly. It becomes excruciating if we try to hold that brace for any period of time. At that point, anything after that, it then becomes torture. You let people know you're going to rip the Band-Aid off, and then you rip it off. Don't rip it off with no warning. That's blindsiding people. That's unfair. But once you've warned them, you've got to pull the trigger.
That is great advice. And frankly, there's a lot of people in partnerships where they They do exactly that, Chris. They linger, they hang on, they give you the signs, they pull away, they no longer post about you, or they no longer go to events with you, or they do the slow unwinding. Now, Chris, in your opinion, is that because that person is still kind of unsure of what to do? And if you are at the receiving end of this pulling away, what can one do so that you can like identify, look, there's a serious issue here. We're not in the same place. Instead of being confrontational, how can we as a partner bring that up to notice there's a difference here? And if you want to fix it, because is there a point where it's irreparable? Like if you let it go too long?
Yeah, a lot of really good questions in there. Okay, to start with, this is going to sound harsh, but if you're letting it linger out, you're saving yourself. You're not saving them. You're telling yourself, I'm trying to take it easy on them. You're taking it easy on you. You know, you're ducking the inevitable, and you're trying to soften the boat for yourself. You're not trying to soften it for them. It's just completely self-centered to drag it out. Whatever you're feeling lost, you don't want to accept it and work out. I mean, there's no bad on either person. If it doesn't fit, that doesn't make anybody wrong. It just means that it doesn't fit. And the longer that you wait to move on, the longer you keep both of you from better lives. So you're not being nice to anybody. You're hurting everybody. I mean, it's inevitable. A bad relationship, is a bad deal. We say there's no deal is better than a bad deal. No relationship is better than a bad relationship. You, as an individual, as a human being, you can't thrive in a bad relationship. You can't grow. You're only denying yourself and everybody in your life the best you that you could possibly be, and that's not good for anybody. So it's
so logical and painful at the same time. Like it's logical and painful because I've been at both the, when I was young, 19, madly in love with this guy, not the right guy for me, clearly. He ended it with me. I was all, oh my God, about it. And then I've been the one where I found myself in relationships that I didn't want to be in. And I cut those off. Some, they dragged on. I didn't know what to do, right? And realizing now as a mature woman that and learning, it's not easy to sever ties sometimes when you go back and think, oh, but we did this together and we did that together and so on. I love your terminology of a bad deal. If you both are, what makes a bad deal for you in a relationship, Chris?
Wow,
what's the deal breaker when you're like, all right, it's time to, there's no negotiation here anymore. It's time to exit.
I think I've actually probably changed, become more aware of that over the last couple of years because I've gone from hoping people will learn and change to accepting that they're not going to. I mean,
that's an important distinction, Chris.
Yeah, people are not gonna change. Like if there's something, if you're saying to yourself, if they just work on this,
right,
it would be perfect. You're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong relationship. You're in the wrong job. And my boss would just be a better person. This company would just take this attitude. Look, you got to get out of there.
Right.
You're not taking care of yourself. You're not taking care of them. There was, depending upon however it takes you to embrace the idea. Like I'm not a quitter,
right?
But, one of the Harvard Business School professors, and I wish I could think of his name. He gave a graduation speech a couple years ago where he talked about quitting his way to happiness. I mean, he just became enormously aware of personal, professional relationships that were bad for him early on. And he just said, I'm not going to torment myself with this. And he pulled the plug. And he pulled the plug a whole bunch of times. And he ended up as a professor at the Harvard Business School. And he is ridiculously happy and satisfied there. And the
So
students
good.
who go to school there, they love him. I wish I could think of his name, but he called it quitting his way to success. Now, I personally am not a quitter, but I'm a much better recognizer of, when
A bad deal.
up, a bad deal.
Yeah, it's a bad deal.
And I'm out. I mean, I'm just out. I'm ridiculously quick at pulling the plug on things these days, and I'm a happier person.
I love that. Let's move to a little bit of a business question, because I know you also have a family business. There's people in your family in your business, and we were on standby because you're about to have your first grandchild.
I'm going to be grandfather.
Everybody, let's wish Chris to have a healthy, happy baby that's going to be in his arms really, really soon. That being said, what qualities do you look for in a team member? And what are some of the interview questions you would ask to consider to someone to work with you? A lot of entrepreneurs will be watching this. A lot of people, ask me questions about how to hire, who should they hire. Can we talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, our company's core values, my son and I are very much alike. First is what we call blue collar. You got to be able to roll up your sleeves, whatever it takes. If there's a task in front of you, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter. If you think it's beneath you, then you're probably on the wrong team.
Okay, so you try to screen out the princesses or the people that are too good for certain jobs.
Yeah, and that's probably a terminology that's being a little bit harsh, but sure. we're very much pitch in. We've got a pitch in attitude. If you're waiting for somebody to ask you to invite you in, then you're falling behind the curve already. We need people who want to jump in. People who say, instead of people going say, we have a meeting, I want people saying, okay, so what's the next step?
Got it.
Instead of being waiting until I delegate something to them. And if I fail to delegate to them, have them say, okay, well, I don't know what to do. Nobody told me what to do. You're not going to fit in well with that.
So those are leadership qualities. Those are qualities of people that are not instigators. They're ambitious. They like to ask for help. They, as you said, they dive in. So that's a quality that you look for. Somebody who
anticipation is part of that. Yeah.
Okay. In my industry, I've always looked for people that were hungry. Now that was hungry to help, hungry to make a living, but they had that desire to do something and they weren't complacent, right? They weren't order takers. Especially in my business, you cannot be an order taker. You've got to get out there. So I love that. Okay.
Yeah, I like that term a lot too. Hungry is a great descriptor. Yeah,
hungry. Okay. What else do you look for?
Well, we'll say something. We call somebody's a team player, but there's a real distinction that we came to understand the hard way.
Okay.
Because there's some people, and everybody's going to say they're a team player, but some people are. I want the team to join me. I want the team to support me. I'm the rock star. I'm the all-star, and yeah, I'm a team player. The team is there to help me. And there are other people that want to pitch in and make the team better. There's a real big difference as to whether you're worried about the performance of the rest of the team, or it doesn't even occur to you until you feel they're failing to help you. And I have worked with a bunch of people, the guy that says, like, look, when I let you know I need you, since I rarely ask for help, and I had a colleague like this in the FBI, he used to say, since I never ask for help, if I call for you, you better come running.
He said that to you?
He said that to all of us. He
okay.
said, you guys know that I'm autonomous. You know that I don't ask for help unless I need it. So when I call for help, come running. And what he in point of fact, what that meant was he never spoke to us until he wanted us. And
I'm trying to determine, is that good or bad? Are you?
Oh, that's really bad. If you've kept me in the dark for a week, and then on Saturday morning you want to know why I won't answer my phone. Well, you kept me in the dark for a week. I'm not picking up the phone on Saturday morning. I'm not looking at you keep me in the dark. then if you ignore me, then I'm going to ignore you. And that's just the way it's going to work out. I need to know what's going on. I need to be clued in. I need you to wonder if I need your help.
It's like people in relationships who walk around angry and upset that you didn't read their mind, right? Like, you should have read my mind. Happens all the time. All right. So what you're saying is you also want your team members to be communicative
and look at each other. It's a little bit more than communicative. You could call somebody up. You walk somebody. I walk back I remember a few years ago, I'm walking back by one of my colleagues in the office, and I can see a really distressed look on his face. And he is not saying boo to me or anybody else.
Okay.
And I just looked in, and I could tell he was stressed. And I go, "You okay?" And he just kind of went, yeah, no, I'm good. And then a couple of weeks later, he said to me, "That was a tough time. The fact that you noticed mattered." And I just noticed. So you got to look at people and at least inquire if you sense that they need help. You see somebody struggling, walk up and say, "Hey, what can I do?" You see a distressed look on somebody's face. Let them know that you see it, instead of going like, "Oh, they didn't say anything to me, so did I do something wrong?" Well, I know I didn't do anything wrong, so it's not on.
That's an interesting point, Chris, because that's an employee situation. This was somebody on your team, right, that you noticed was not feeling well or was clearly distraught.
Right.
And you're a trained professional. It's not like they could get away with it anyway. You saw the body language. They were sending messages of distress and stress and whatever. That being said, you made it a point to question. The response was, "I'm okay." You knew they weren't okay, but that was the response. Is there a point when, like, how do we take it a step further so that, you use your own judgment of when you should step in? But in some cases, like, we're dealing with mental health issues. We're dealing with people that don't want to talk or they can't talk or whatever the case is. Is there a way that we can dig a little deeper when it's appropriate? Like, maybe it's our kids, maybe it's our loved one, that we don't take the, "No, I'm okay," but you can tell they're not okay. Is it okay to walk away from that situation? In your case, it was an employee situation, but in a personal relationship, when you want to know what's going on and you can be of service, how do we navigate that?
Yeah, well, my reaction to that is you try a couple of more times to get in.
Okay.
Be respectful. Don't get angry.
Okay.
If it's causing a problem, there's a great approach in deference. Like, you can say, "All right, so you say you're okay, and this is the effect your behavior is having. What do you want me to do?"
I love that. Okay. Because they're not okay. They're just fast. They're like kind of brushing it off. There's an elephant in the room. This is what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's an elephant and the elephant is you're slouched down. You're not talking. We're not having intimacy or whatever that looks like. And you say it's okay. It's not okay.
Yeah. But then put it back on them. The way I put it back in that question, you ask somebody what or how.
Okay.
How are we supposed to move forward? What do you want me to do? What do you want to have happen here? First of all, it doesn't make them feel backed into a corner. Nobody wants to be cornered. They want to feel like they have options. They want to feel like their autonomy is still being preserved. Okay. But what it simultaneously does is the what or how question squarely puts it back on them.
So what or how? So that's a good way to start an inquiry or a discussion that does not seem confrontational. You're right. Asking them to start with what or how. Okay, great. There was an incoming question that just came in. What's one thing about your industry that outsiders are probably unaware of?
So are we referring to the business negotiation industry?
Let's assume it's in the business negotiations. Yes.
Yeah. Empathy is a source of power in negotiations.
Okay.
True tactical empathy. You want to be powerful in a negotiation. The more you use empathy to display understanding, the more powerful you are. Now, that power is is a very gentle power, but you can move mountains. You save time. The demonstration of understanding in personal relationships and in business negotiations creates game-changing moments that last. And it's really focused around articulating fearlessly the other side's reasons for not doing things. I'll give you an example.
Yes, please.
Woman, and so many of our examples are women because they're a little more courageous with using empathy. She's in a renegotiation of a lease for an apartment that she's leasing. Her and her spouse are trying to decide whether or not they're going to buy a house. They're going to re-up on a lease. Landlord wants, and this is in a pandemic.
Okay.
Recently.
This is a real life situation you're talking about.
Yeah, this just happened.
Okay.
Landlord wants an increase. Now, you're lucky to have tenants at all, is the logic of the situation. You're lucky you got a paying tenant. The logic's got nothing to do with reality. Nothing. Okay. Landlord wants an increase because other tenants are not paying. They got vacancies in other places. From a landlord's perspective, I got a paying tenant. This tenant's got to help me make my bills. I got to increase expenses. Landlord gets back to him and says, "Hey, look, here's your new lease. There's an increase because I got increase in expenses. Taxes are going up. All my expenses are going up. I got bills to pay just like you." So the tenant, all she wants to do is get a that's right out of the landlord. How do you get a that's right? Start with their reasons for their position, not your reasons for your position. Their reasons for their position.
Okay.
So she sits down with the landlord and she goes like, "Look, you're looking for a rent increase here because your expenses are up, because taxes are up, because you got a lot of bills to pay." Basically made her landlord's argument for her.
Okay.
And the landlord said, "That's right. But if giving you no rent increase is what I got to do to keep you as a tenant, we're going to keep your rent exactly where it is." Boom.
So just because she pointed out what he told her, like she got to where he was and she showed in that getting of where he was at, that was empathetic. Like she was being empathetic to his situation. In turn, he gave her a break.
Yeah.
Or he let it, he status quo.
He felt recognized. Now, I could get into the neuroscience of why this works. And the only way anybody's ever going to believe that getting a that's right out of somebody creates a game-changing moment by articulating their reasons for not doing something. If you're listening to this, you are never going to believe it's going to happen until you try it. You got to road test this magic spell. You are not going to believe that I've just given you a magic wand and we were at Hogwarts and this spell's going to work, but it's going to work. You got to road test it. Go get a that's right out of somebody, articulate the reasons for not doing anything.
Can you tell everybody what is a that's right? It's actually a new terminology that I'm hearing you say. So just for everyone else.
It's when the other person feels you've articulated their reasons for what.
Oh, you said that's right. Sorry, I thought you were saying VAT. So that's right. Got it. Okay. We talked about it when we started. Okay. That's right. Meaning that is the green light to know the other person has gotten you.
They feel heard.
Got you.
Making somebody feel heard gives them that oxytocin hit.
Got you. Okay. Here's a magic question. Very general, and it pertains to sales, which is a business question. Also can happen in our personal lives, but What is the best response, or what first comes to mind when someone says, I want to think about it?
Oh, they just said no. They just said no. That not to decide is to decide. So the answer is no. They're ambivalent, but they're not going to pull the trigger. They're scared to come out of the status quo.
What does that tell you about the conversation you just had? How do we, rather than calling it backpedal, I'm sure your skill set can take that no to a yes. There is a path from the no to a yes, correct?
Yeah, there is. There is a path to agreement there.
What's the first step then in hearing I need to think about it, translated no, because that's really what it is, right? It's really a no, but they're saying I'm going to think about it. What's a great follow-up question to steer them back, and what do you say to yourself in that moment? Because we'd have to take responsibility for that answer, right? There's something that was missing per se, or it's just a not now. So how would you respond to that?
Well, there's a lot of, the reality is the other person doesn't feel like they've been heard, that you've listened to them, that you get them. I mean, I need to think about it should tell you that you've been pitching and you've been talking way too much. And you do not know enough about them. You've just been trying to roll over them. You probably know nothing about them other than that they got a checkbook. They got the ability to pay. You're seeing dollar signs. That's all you're seeing, and they know it. So you are selling. You're selling. You're bullshitting. You're lying. You are not doing a good job. Somebody says, "I need to think about it." It's on you. You're screwing up. So what do you do? How do you save it in a moment? Start out by saying, "Sounds like you got good reasons for being hesitant." Because if they say they're thinking about it, they're telling you, number one, they're hesitant. Number two, whatever those reasons are inside their head, in their head, are sufficient for them being hesitant. Now, if you say I got to think about it, you probably have no idea why they're being hesitant. Maybe you do, but you got to get them to articulate it. You got to get them to take what's ever in their head and bring it out.
So do you actually then say, that's the lead in? Sounds like you have good reasons to be hesitant.
Right.
Do you now say, can you share those with me?
No, you don't. No,
you don't say that. Okay.
You just asked a question where you're trying to get a yes out of them, and yes is a trap. Yes is the word that's used to trap them on a regular basis. They're leery of that. So you want to stay away from trying to get yes out of them entirely. So first thing, it's not like you got good reasons for saying that. Now you got to shut up. Again, this is where dynamic silence comes into play. They're expecting you to argue with them. They're expecting you to argue, to pitch, to explain. Those are synonyms for the same word. If you're explaining, you're losing. Ronald Reagan said that a long time ago. Whether you like his politics or not, he's one of the greatest communicators that ever lived.
If you are, I got to get that in my head. You're saying if you're explaining, you're losing.
If you're explaining, you're losing.
Tell me what that means.
Well, if I got to explain something to you, what am I really saying to you? What are you hearing?
You don't get it. You don't get it. You're hearing like either
you're stupid.
Yes.
If I got to explain something to you, you don't explain stuff to people that you think are smart or right. You say that's right to them. If you explain something to someone, what you say and what they hear is that you think they're stupid. And in point of fact, you only explain stuff to people that you think are wrong. They're either in the dark or they're dumb. So that's the message that people get when you explain. And that's why if you're explaining, you're losing. That's not good for relationships. When was the last time your significant other explained something to you and you said to yourself, wow, I feel so much better now?
The minute he starts explaining, it's so funny, Chris. The minute he starts to explain things to me, I'm like, am I stupid? Do I look like an idiot?
Yeah.
Right?
Now, that's not the intent. That's really not what people are trying to communicate. And that's why people get so off base here, because somebody might actually be trying to help you. You know, the intent is, look, I'm trying to help here. But what you say and what they hear, when you explain that the other person's reaction is exactly like yours is. What am I, stupid? I am insulted by you explaining something to me that is inherently insulting. That's why if you're explaining, you're losing.
Someone was saying there are times that you are explaining because you have insight and deeper revelation on the matter.
Right, which is saying you're smarter than they are, which is saying they're stupid. That's not a good message. It might be true. It might be true. There's a big difference between what's true and what the message is. And that's what people really don't get about tactical empathy or empathy in general. You might have insight. It's still insulting. You can't get around that.
Tactical empathy. I like that. And you also said dynamic silence. So let's go back to the dynamic silence. You say clearly you have good reason for feeling hesitant, quiet.
Right.
What does the other party tend to do? Yes, I do have good reason. Like I'm just role playing this scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have good reason. Of course I do.
Perfect. Now we're on the right track, because now we're talking. Now all of a sudden, now you're testing me. Because before you wanted to get out of the room. Now you've just got now you're just giving me an indicator that you're willing to talk, as long as I don't go back to explaining, as long as I don't go back to telling you you're stupid, you're wrong, you lack insight, you lack knowledge. I have information you don't have, which again is I'm smarter than you. I mean, none of that is good. None of that is good. So if the person says, yeah, I do have good reasons for it, now they're knocking on the door of collaborative conversation. And the last thing you want to do is shut them back down.
How do we carry forward then? Let's just complete this cycle and this step from, I want to think about it, which is a no. You didn't get them. They now say, yeah, I have good, you might have good, yes, I do. What's the path we steer? Do we go back to our quote unquote presentation, the thought, the inquiry? How do we get the desired result that we want?
Well, the real question is ultimately what you want to say to them, what's going to happen if you do nothing?
Okay.
Now that in sales, because this started as a sales conversation, you know, the real enemy is the status quo, doing nothing. Comfortable inaction is the enemy. And it's the enemy over and over, because people are content with the status quo. From their perspective, the devil known is better than the devil unknown.
I really love that. And I couldn't agree more with being like comfortable in action, because most people are uncomfortable because they're taking a new action. And and depending on what you're offering, we're comfortable. Some people, like as a matchmaker, some people are comfortable being alone. Because the thought of rejection, the thought of going through another relationship, the thought of starting over, it's like, forget that noise. I'm not doing this again. I'm not sweating. Like, that's real to people. Like, it's safe to be in your bubble and to not do anything. Even if it's like losing that 20 pounds, or for that matter, 200 pounds.
Right.
We don't want to do the work sometimes. We just want the result. And sometimes we don't want to do the work. That's great. And, you know, there's a lot of jabber and banter about, there's some disagreement about what you're saying. And that's totally cool, because some people think, I'll just read it. It depends on the listener. I disagree. They shouldn't be insulted. That's their own insecurity. And to that point, of course, people have insecurity, but what do? We can't dominate our security and not acknowledge that somebody has an insecurity. I really believe we do have to get to the level of understanding.
Yeah, well, you know, it's not about you. I mean, empathy is not about you. Empathy is about the other person's perspective. And that's what most people don't get about empathy. Empathy is not about you. It's about them. If you can't make that shift, then you're against empathy.
Yeah, somebody asked a question about, empathy is like this, maybe not necessarily a buzzword, but they said something, is empathy weakness? Some people view empathy as weakness.
Right.
Do you have a rebuttal to that or a comment about that?
Yeah, well, do I seem weak?
No. No.
Yeah,
to some people, I mean, maybe to a narcissist, empathy is weakness.
No, actually, the narcissists, well, not narcissists, sociopaths are actually the very best at empathy. Why are sociopaths the very best of empathy? Because it's actually the single most powerful influence tool on earth. And sociopaths don't care what works. They just want to know what works. Like if I want to manipulate you, I don't care how I manipulate you. All I want is to manipulate you. I really don't care how. All I care about is what works. And that's a great thing about empathy as a negotiating tool, as a relationship tool. It meets the criteria for both missionaries and mercenaries. What am I talking about? A mercenary only cares what works. A missionary likes it because it's good for you. I can use empathy to influence you, and you're going to be happier as a result. That works for me. It meets both of my criteria as missionary and mercenary. And if it meets the criteria for both, then you ought to use it.
That's great. Let me ask you, in the world of sales and in fact, social media and in person, first impressions make a lasting impression at times.
No, they do not.
Sorry?
I would disagree.
Okay. I said so, at times, right? And thank you. I want you to not challenge me, but I want to hear your view. That being said, what do you look for, or what do you notice with your skill set, with all of the years that you've had in dealing with terrorists and dealing with all personalities? What do you notice first about someone? I'm curious to know that. And secondly, how does one make a good first impression? Some quick tips on that.
All right. So first, critical issues to make a good first impression. The other side is looking for trust and competence. Can they trust you? Are you competent? There's a clear distinction between competence and confidence.
Okay.
Now, confidence is also a follow-on important thing, but I'm going to look much more for displays of competence versus confidence.
How do you look for competence in a visual? Meaning, when I'm talking about initial visual cues, and then maybe your first, couple of minutes with that individual.
Well, right? My first visual is just going to be as long as the body language is not bad.
Okay.
And here's the distinction on first impressions versus other impressions. Bad first impressions will destroy you. Your first impression only needs to not be bad.
Okay.
Now, as soon as you get past the first impression, then the controlling factor of the entire interaction is going to be the last impression. The last impression is the lasting impression. It's one of the reasons Oprah Winfrey is a billionaire. Her fundamental philosophy in all their interactions, and I've had some conversations with people who work for her and have worked for her for years, and they've confirmed. I haven't ever spoken to Oprah. I don't expect that to happen, but I've spoken to people that are close enough to her either are or have been in her inner circle, and they said, "Yeah, this is exactly the way Oprah operates."
See, now I understand. I didn't understand what you meant when you said your first impression it's your last impression. So even if you make a bad first impression for whatever reason, caught you in a bad day, you're like, I don't know, swearing at a guy because you got road rage, it's the last impression you leave with someone.
Last impression is the lasting impression.
Okay.
And there's data that backs that up, and then there's operational practice. It's one of the things that we focus on to an extreme degree when we're coaching people in negotiation. So last impression is a lasting impression.
Okay. Other question, because you have a son. Are there different sets of rules to negotiating with children?
Well, no. Great negotiation is about great collaboration, and it's also about getting the other person to think. And as a parent, you want to get your kids to think. You want to encourage them to think. You want to encourage their autonomy. You want to encourage their competence in being able to think. So by and large, if that's what you're looking for, great collaboration and getting the other side to think in a really effective, positive manner, then I don't understand why you wouldn't want to do that with your kids.
Got it. And other question. There's a lot of commentary on the back here. I wanted to open up for communication.
You got to engage.
Yeah, exactly. When trust is broken, we have about 6 more minutes. When trust is broken in any relationship, be it professional, personal, whatnot, how do we reestablish that trust, Chris? What are the steps that we can take to reestablish that trust? And in your experience, are there how do we know when that trust is just irreparable? Is it a confirmation by the other person? Is it a lack of willingness? Like, I know it's so loaded, but I'd love to know your ideas and thoughts on how to rebuild trust.
All right. Yeah. And I want to categorize this by saying best chance of success. All the stuff that I talk about, there's no guarantee of success for anything, but there is best chance of success.
Okay.
And best chance of success by definition means sometimes it's not going to work. So if you tell yourself, I could imagine how this wouldn't work out, therefore I'm not going to try it. Well, look, you're destroying yourself and you're defeating yourself in advance. So best chance of success. Take away the word trust, put in the word predictability. How are your actions predictable? I mean, that's when trusts are broken, when your words and your actions don't line up. And they haven't lined up for a while. And you say one thing and you do another over and over and over again. So what you've done is you've conditioned the other person that everything you say is useless because your actions don't back them up.
But that sounds like somebody needs to go. I mean, that sounds like a person who doesn't have integrity, right? Like,
well,
it's a lack of integrity. If you continue to apologize for the same thing over and over and over again, or you find yourself in that revolving door of the same issue.
Exactly. So you want to rebuild trust, you better look at your own actions and then understand you're conditioning the person by your actions. Now, if you plan on acting right, then act right and stick to it. And it's going to take them a little while for those wounds to heal, for those scars to heal, because you've conditioned them so badly up to that point in time. So yeah, it's going to take a little while. You can't say I promise to be good when every time you said that in the past you didn't back it up. So you're going to have to back it up with action. Make yourself predictable and rebuild trust based on a predictability of your actions.
Thank you. And finally, what can we expect from your masterclass? I see them all the time. Tell me about the masterclass. What's the content in it? Is it geared towards professional negotiations, or do you find that it can be translated into, as you said, personal and otherwise? How did that happen? How did you become a masterclass instructor?
Well, it works for everything, because this is about human nature, collaboration, how we're wired as people. The really cool thing I love about the masterclass is, it's skewing heavily towards women. I mean, women are eating it up, and it's the first place, and I don't know exactly why, I could speculate on the context of why, but it's the first time that the data has actually shown us that the women are much bigger customers than the men are. By and large, we don't have that kind of data other places.
So you're specifically speaking about your class.
Yes.
Because I don't know if you have insight into other classes, but your class in particular, the art of negotiation, you're seeing a big female purchase. Like most women are interested in this program. Yeah,
the masterclass, there's two things about it. It is their most purchased class, period, and it's skewing heavily towards women.
Congratulations. That's great. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
So,
And yeah, so what can I expect to get out of that class?
well, if it's a format, first of all, the format is different. The book is reading. That's one way to learn. There are times in a day that you should read. There are other times when you need audio and visual. So you got an audio visual format. There's a couple cases in it. The Joe Carroll case that I talk about in that, I haven't spoken about it anywhere else. I was really surprised and delighted they wanted to put it in. So there are a few things that exist there that are nowhere else. The Joe Carroll case is one of those. We really break down the conversation at Chase Manhattan Bank. Although I mentioned at Chase Manhattan Bank in my book, I don't break it down the conversation like that anywhere else. We got a couple of role plays that are a lot of fun. They brought in this young lady who's an actress, actor, and she role played some stuff, and she was phenomenal. And
she role played with you some negotiations tactics.
I'm sorry?
She negotiated with you on negotiation tactics? Is that what you're
back and forth? I mean, she played a role. We did the bank robbery thing. Anita Khan, 60 seconds, so she dies. They asked her to play the role like you're a teenager that wants to go spend a weekend with his boyfriend. You be her and I'll be the dad. I got to be the parent. Let's role play how I talk you out of it.
Very cool.
And, there was some really fun stuff in there. The Masterclass people, it was a lot of fun doing it. It's one of the most fun instructional things I think that I've done.
How long is the actual course?
I think they're like 8 lessons. They're either 8 or 10 lessons. I mean, there's a lot there.
All right.
They really knocked themselves out putting a lot of useful stuff in it.
Amazing. And finally, what are you up to? How can I've got your Instagram handle here. What's next for you? What's going on? And what's the first thing you're going to do post-pandemic?
Well, we're diving deep into the virtual world now. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that have kind of been waiting for virtual training to come alive.
Right. And
so now that we have to do it, we're finding out, people like it about an hour and a half at a time. They'll take a day long in-person session. Let's spread that out over 3 days. We're at home. We can integrate this stuff much more into our personal lives. So we are moving into a new world of human development being enhanced by what we're doing online and getting our personal lives back into our professional lives. So this is really cool where everything is going right now. This is an accelerated time frame, and we love the way everything's being accelerated.
So do you miss the travel though? Because you're usually on a plane, you're speaking in front of people. Do you like that? Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Well, I'm both.
Okay.
I love the travel. I love adventure. I love travel. So, I'm looking forward to when it comes back. But what we're learning in this time frame now is so fascinating on how to interact with people that I don't feel that I'm missing anything. I feel like I'm doing, I got a different flavor of ice cream that I'm trying out that I really like.
That's awesome. And you can't have too many flavors of ice cream. Chris, thank you. I know you're busy. For those who don't know, he's in Las Vegas. He was here at 7 a.m. Thank you all for your questions. Thank you for your commentary. We had good, bad, ugly, the whole thing. I'm going to be doing your masterclass. I really thank you for your time. And I'm sure it won't be the last. So bye. And good luck with the baby. Congrats.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.